Close your eyes for a moment. I want you to imagine something. Imagine standing somewhere so cold that the air itself feels like glass when it enters your lungs. Imagine a silence so deep that you can hear your own heartbeat echoing back to you. Imagine a place where the wind doesn't blow, it screams at speeds that would knock a grown man off his feet without warning. Now open your eyes, because what I'm about to tell you is not a dream. It is not a fairy tale. It is a place that exists right now, on this very earth, spinning beneath our feet, and it holds a secret that most people in this world will never know. Antarctica. Say the word slowly. Antarctica. It sounds distant, it sounds cold. It sounds like something from a documentary you once watched late at night, half asleep, half awake. The kind of program that plays when the rest of the world has already gone to bed. But I want you to lean in today. I want you to listen the way you listened as a child, when someone told you a story for the first time and every single word felt like it mattered. Because this story matters, and somewhere inside it, there is a truth that will quietly change the way you see the world. Let me start at the beginning. Antarctica is the fifth largest continent on this planet. It covers about 14 million square kilometers. It sits at the very bottom of the Earth, the southernmost point, a place humans were not even able to reach until 1911. Think about that. We had already built great empires, sailed across oceans, written poetry that made people weep. And still, this continent remained untouched by human feet until just over 100 years ago. The first man to reach the South Pole was a Norwegian explorer named Roald Amundsen. He arrived on December 14, 1911, with 4 companions and a team of sled dogs, after weeks of brutal, punishing travel across a frozen landscape that had no mercy for the weak. He planted a flag in the ice. He looked around at the endless white horizon, and then he had to find his way back, because this was a place that did not forgive mistakes. Now here is where I need you to hold something in your mind, something that might feel impossible at first. Something that the more you think about it, the more it will quietly rearrange everything you thought you knew. Antarctica is a desert, not a metaphor, not a poetic comparison. A real, classified, scientifically documented desert. The Antarctic interior receives less than 2 inches of precipitation per year. 2 inches. The Sahara Desert in Africa, the one you picture when someone says the word desert, the one with golden dunes and scorching sun and camels walking in single file, even the Sahara receives more rainfall on average than Antarctica does. Antarctica is not just a desert, it is the largest desert on Earth, and it is made entirely of ice. How do you hold that in your mind? A desert made of ice. A place so cold and so dry that it technically qualifies as barren land. A place where very little can survive. And yet it is covered under nearly 2 miles of frozen water in certain regions. The ice sheet of Antarctica contains about 26.5 million cubic kilometers of ice. Scientists have calculated that if all of this ice were to melt, all of it, completely, the world's sea levels would rise by approximately 58 meters. 58 meters. Major cities would disappear entirely. Coastlines that have existed for thousands of years would simply be gone. Every map you have ever looked at would need to be redrawn. But this is not a story about fear. I want to be clear about that. This is a story about something much older and much quieter. This is a story about what it means for something to appear one way on the outside, while being something entirely different underneath. Because here is what most people do not know about Antarctica. Beneath that ice, beneath those 2 miles of frozen silence, there are lakes, real liquid lakes. Scientists have discovered more than 400 subglacial lakes hidden under the Antarctic ice sheet. The largest of them is called Lake Vostok. It is buried under nearly 4 kilometers of ice, and it has been isolated from the rest of the world for an estimated 15 to 25 million years. The water in that lake has not seen sunlight in millions of years. It has not touched the open air since before modern humans existed, and yet it is liquid. It is alive in some scientific sense. And in 2012, a team of Russian scientists drilled down through the ice for decades, literally decades of drilling, and finally broke through into the waters of Lake Vostok. What did they find? Life. Microbial life. Organisms that had survived in total darkness, under crushing pressure, in near-freezing water, without sunlight or warmth, for an almost incomprehensible stretch of time. Life finding a way in a place where life had no business existing at all. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because this is the part of the story that I believe speaks to something inside every person who has ever felt buried. Every person who has ever felt like the world above has frozen over, and they are sitting somewhere deep beneath it, in the dark, wondering if anyone will ever break through, if anyone will ever find them, if anything is still alive inside them after all this time. Because here is what the science tells us, and here is what the story tells us, and sometimes they say the same thing in different words. Life does not always look the way we expect it to look. Survival does not always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like a lake sitting quietly under 2 miles of ice for 20 million years, invisible to everyone but present, still there, still real. Antarctica has no permanent human residence. No one was born there. No one has ever called it home the way you call a place home, the way you know which floorboard creaks at night, the way you know the smell of the kitchen in the morning. But every year, somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 scientists travel there to study it. They come from all over the world. They live in research stations, with names like McMurdo and Amundsen Scott. They endure temperatures that can drop to -89 degrees Celsius. The coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth's surface was in Antarctica on July 21, 1983, -89.2 degrees Celsius. If you were exposed to that temperature without protection, the moisture in your eyes would begin to freeze. Your breath would turn to crystals before it even left your lips. And these scientists choose to go there. They choose to leave behind warmth and comfort and the people they love. They choose it because something in that frozen, silent, impossible place is telling them something that cannot be heard anywhere else. The ice itself is a record. Did you know that? When snow falls in Antarctica and compresses over thousands of years into ice, it traps tiny air bubbles. Those bubbles contain samples of the ancient atmosphere, the actual air that existed on this planet hundreds of thousands of years ago. Scientists drill out long cylinders of this ice, called ice cores, and they read them the way you might read old letters from someone who lived a long time before you. Layer by layer, year by year. The ice remembers everything. It holds a record of ancient climate shifts, of volcanic eruptions that happened before written history, of changes in the atmosphere that shaped the world we live in now. The ice is, in the most literal sense, a library. A frozen library buried at the bottom of the world, written in a language that took us centuries to learn how to read. Now, I told you at the beginning of this story that I would tell you the truth, and here is where I need to be honest with you. Everything I have told you, the desert, the lakes, the ice cores, the temperatures, the microbial life, that is all real. That is documented science. That is the world as it is. But the way I have told it to you is a story, because I believe that facts alone do not change people. Facts inform the mind, but stories reach into something older and deeper. Stories speak to the part of you that is not just a thinking person but a feeling person. The part that knows, without being able to explain why, that a frozen lake sitting in the dark for 20 million years has something to say about the human experience. And here is what I believe it says. To you, To anyone who is watching this and has lived long enough to know what it feels like when life freezes over. When the world above keeps moving and you feel like you are somewhere beneath it, still and cold and unseen, you are still there. Whatever is alive in you has not stopped being alive simply because it cannot be seen. The lake does not know that scientists will one day drill down and find it. It does not spend its long darkness hoping to be discovered. It simply continues to exist, quietly, in the space it was given. And when the drill finally breaks through, what they find is not death. What they find is life that has learned to live without light. That is not a metaphor I invented. That is what actually happened, 4 kilometers beneath the Antarctic ice, in the year 2012. Antarctica receives about 45 minutes of sunlight in the heart of winter at the South Pole. 45 minutes for the entire day, if that. And yet penguin colonies survive there. Emperor penguins, the ones who travel 50 to 120 kilometers across the ice just to reach their breeding grounds, huddle together in groups of thousands during the polar winter, rotating slowly so that every bird takes a turn on the outside of the huddle, exposed to the cold, and every bird gets time in the warm center. They take turns being the one who faces the storm so that the group survives. No single penguin endures the worst of it forever. They share the burden, they rotate, they persist. There is something in that, I think, for every person who feels like they are always the one on the outside of the huddle. This is what Antarctica teaches us, if we are willing to listen to it. That the most extreme places on Earth are not empty. They are full of something that chose to stay. Something that adapted, that pressed down deep, that learned a different kind of living. The continent that looks like nothing but ice and wind and endless, indifferent cold. That continent holds the world's largest freshwater reserve. Roughly 70% of all the fresh water on Earth is locked inside the Antarctic ice sheet. The driest, coldest, most inhospitable place on this planet is secretly the place that holds the most water. Things are rarely what they appear to be on the surface. I want you to remember that. Not just about Antarctica, about the quiet person you underestimated, about the season of your life that looked like loss but was secretly a library being written in ice, about the part of yourself you thought was frozen but is actually a subglacial lake, patient and dark and full of things that are still alive. Antarctica is real. The facts I have told you are real. The lake is real. The penguins are real. The coldest temperature ever recorded is real. The freshwater locked inside that ice is real. But the reason I am telling you this story, the reason I chose this particular place, this frozen contradiction at the bottom of the earth, is because I believe some truths can only be carried in a story. And I believe this one belongs to you, the desert made of ice, the library written in frozen air, the lake that waited 20 million years to be found, the penguins who take turns facing the storm. This is Antarctica, and now somehow it is also yours.